because I would hate to do it again. Baruch Hashem. So we'll start with a prayer for the safe return of the captives. Mishiberach Avosenu Avram Yitzchak Yaakov Yivarech Yishmor V'Yinsoros Nidrei Tzva Haganah Yisrael V'Chatufei Yeshivei Hadarom B'nei Amtaf Hashim Zekeinim U'Na'arim Chatufim B'dei B'nei Avla Oivei Amcha M'Chalei Ad Mosecha Bavur She'anachnu Mispalim B'Avuram HaKadosh Baruch Hu Malei Rachem Aleim Yichazek Es Libam Ya'ametzes Rucham Yotzei Mechoshech V'Tzalmaves Mimos Roseim Yinatek Mikutoseim Yoshiem Yoshivim Nehera L'chek Mishpachoseim V'Kayem Behem Mikra Shekasu Puduyei Adonai Yishuvun Uva'u Tzion V'Rina Simcha Salam Al Rosham Sason V'Simcha Yasigu V'Nasu Yagon Manacha Nomar Amen. And a prayer for the IDF soldiers in harm's way every single day on more than one front. May they be continually guided and protected by Hashem Yisparach. Mishiberach Avosenu Avram Yitzchak Yaakov V'Orech Es Chaylei Tzva Haganah Yisrael Anshei Bitachon Omdim Al Mishmar Atzenu V'Yorei Eloheinu B'Gvul Havanon V'Ad Midbar Mitzrayim Min Hayam Hagadol Ad Lavo Ha'arava V'Yavasha V'Avir V'Yam Yitein Adonai Soivenu Hakamim Aleinu Nigafim Lifneihem HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yishmor V'Yatzil Es Chayaleinu V'Kol Tzara V'Tzukah Mikol Nego Machala Yishlach Bracha V'Hatzlacha B'Chol Ma'aseh Yedeihem Yadber Soneinu Tachteihem V'Yatreim V'Cheser Yeshua V'Yateret Nitzachon V'Yikuyam Behem HaKasuv Ki Adonai Elohechem Ha'olech Imachem Yilachem Lachem V'Moivechem L'Hoshiasem and Omar Amen. Now, in our shul, the youngest shul of Lawrence and Cedarhurst, we changed the capital of Tehillim that we say after davening every week, as the rabbi says, to keep us focused and not on automatic. I think it's just basically to improve our reading skills. So this week we are reciting Kapitel 54, Kapitel Nun Daled in shul, so I'd like to do with you. As the Rav said, and if anybody asks me, I will send you explanations of this given by both of our rabbis. Lamatzeach v'neginos maskilu David. V'vo hazifim v'yomru l'Shaul halo David mistateri manu. Elohim v'shimcha hoshi'eni uvurascha sidineni. Elohim shma tfilasi hazina li'imrei fi ki zarim kamu alai. V'aritzim bikshu nafshi Lo samu Elohim lenegdam sela. Ine Elohim ozerli Adonai b'somchei nafshi. Yoshiv hara l'shorarai ba'amitcha atzmisem bin dava es b'cholach. Odesh shimcha Adonai kitov. Ki mikol tzara hatzileni u'v'oivai rasa eini. Our rabbis have told us that this is one of the Tehillim, which is the basis for Tachanun. And as I say, if you would like to see their explanation of it, just send me a message and I'll send it to you. Now, as we daven, as we learn, please put Necha Chaya Tova plus Rachel Ziesel, Richard's wife, Nita Klinkowitz at the top of our list. Thoughts and prayers as she is near Rachmei Shemayim. In addition, let us add the Cholim we know personally, whom we've been davening. Rina Miriam Bas Tova, Hil ben Necha Chaya Tova. Hold on, it's Yaakov Tzvi Tuvia Cohen ben Sarah, Yudas Ita Bas Rivka Yocheved, Aaron Cohen ben Zisel Rachel, Shana Rivka Bas Henya Sarah, Idan ben Tova, Mina Chana Bas Zahava v'Yitzchak Meir, Rivka Bas Chana Sarah. And for so many more in Eretz Yisrael who we don't know, living in uncertainty, in captivity, injured, missing, mourning losses, can't begin to comprehend. And for incomparable chayalim and chayalot, if there are any others you wish to add, or others who have merited refuah shlema and can Baruch Hashem be removed from this list, any yard sites, please let me know. Okay. Again, moreover, Rabbansai, as we begin in earnest this newest of the Sfarim, which is Amos, there are certain terms of phrases within the Nevi'im we study that are identified in that sefer. In Yechezkel, it would be Ben Adam. In this, the first parak of Amos, in 15 sukkim, when a refrain is recited no fewer than 5 times, and 3 more times in parak Bet, it has to be considered significant. In parak Aleph, sukkim, Gimel, Vav, Tes, Yud Aleph, Yud Gimel, they all contain the phrase Al Shlosha Pishei blank Yalba Lo Ashivenu. For 3 sins of any of the nations mentioned, I will turn away its punishment. But for the 4th, I will not turn away its punishment. Each of the nations cited have a unique, unpardonable sin, and presumably 3 sins in common. So let's stack them up and investigate. The first, and if you have the sheets that I sent you, if you printed them out, good. If not, as I gave this. Kormar Hashem, al shlosha pishei damesek, v'arba lo ashivenu, al dusham v'charutzos habarzel es hagilad. And this is damesek, and because they have threshed Gilad with threshing instruments of iron. Next, Komar Hashem, al shlosha pishei aza, el arba lo ashivenu, al haglosam galus shlema, lahaskir le'edom, because they carried away into exile a whole captivity to deliver them up to Edom. Next is Tsor, al haskiram galus shlema, sounds familiar, like the last pasuk, le'edom, the lo zachru bris achim, the additional component, because they delivered a complete captivity to Edom, but they did not remember the bris of brothers. And next is Edom itself. Al rodfu b'cherev achiv v'shiches rachamav v'yitrof ba'ad apo yevraso shmara netzach. Because he pursued his brother with the sword and cast off all pity, and his anger tore or burned perpetually, and he kept his wrath forever. Last, Komar Hashem al shlosha pishei b'nei Amon, el arba lo ashivenu, al bigam choros hagilad, I should say horos hagilad, leman harchives gulam, because they have ripped up the women with child, pregnant women of Gilad, so they may enlarge their borders. Now, Rashi points out very quickly in Pasuk Gimel, we could take this as a given for all the other nations. The kol shekaim sheyesh lo pishaim harbei atah et zeh efkod aleim. Certainly, they have many sins. Now I'm counting sins. Let's deal with this one here. The sin of domestic is listed as al dusham v'charutzos habarzel es hagilad, translated as because they threshed Gilad with threshing instruments of iron. What does that mean? The short answer is excessive cruelty in their warfare against Gilad, wholesale slaughter, as though they used a tool with iron teeth meant for harvesting wheat on the backs of the Giladites. What's the story? And maybe you can help me here. I've tried all the sources the Mefarshim provided. As yet, I haven't found the exact psukim detailing this narrative. I've looked, have not found it. Abba Bernel explains, for example, Melachim Bet, Perik Yud, Lamed Gimel. Hazael attacked all the borders of Israel, meaning that he acted vengefully and disgracefully the inhabitants of Gilad by putting iron threshing boards on their bodies as if they were threshing grain. I can't find the psukim that detail more than this. So what's their punishment? V'shilachti eish bebeis Chazael V'yachla Arbenos ben Hadad. I will send down fire upon the palace of Hazael, and it shall devour the fortresses of Ben Hadad. V'shavarti v'riach damesek v'chrati yoshev v'bikas oven v'somech shevet v'beis edem v'galu am aram kira amar Hashem. I'll break the gate bars, means the locks of Damascus, wipe out the inhabitants from the valley of Aven, and the sceptered ruler of Bet Eden, which means royalty, holding a scepter, and the people of Aram shall be exiled to Kir. Now, Radak and Abarbanel say this will happen to Hazael's descendants by the armies of Sancherib. This punishment is for their kings. Vishavarti b'riach damesek v'chrati yoshev v'bikas oven somech shevet v'beis eden v'galu am aram kira amar Hashem. I'll break the locks of Damascus, wipe out the inhabitants of the valley of Avem, and the ruler who holds the scepter of Bet Edom. People of Aram shall be exiled to Kir. This, Abarbanel says, is about the land. Radak interprets this as their defenses will be inadequate. Metzuda qualifies this to mean as though the bolts were broken and the gates were left open. That's how easy it'll be to walk in and conquer them. V'chrati yoshev mi bikas aven v'somech shevet v'beis eden. Radak says all the remnants of the royal family, tomech shevet, holders of the scepter, will be eradicated. Malbim interprets the psukim Dalet and Hay to show the conquest is in an unnatural order. Usually the enemy attacks from without, from the suburbs, and he works his way into the major cities. Here, the conquest begins with the royal palace of Hazael, followed by adjoining palaces built by his son, Ben Hadad. Next, the locks of the fortified city Damascus, followed by the destruction of Bikas Oven, which surrounds it all. So what's next on the sin parade? Aza. Ooh, we've heard of Aza. Komar Hashem. Al shlosha pishei Aza, vel arba lo hashivenu. Al haglosem galus shleima lahasir edom. For 3 sins, turn away its punishment. The 4th, I won't. Because they carried away into exile a whole captivity to deliver them up to Edom. And you're going to know that the same sin is attributed to Tsar, which follows this. So here Abarbanel explains what was the 4th sin. They ensured that the exile was complete by standing on the road and catching the refugees who were trying to escape from Yisrael and returning them to the captors. Now, Abarbanel prefers how Radak explained it, that the refugees from Yisrael ran by way of the land of the Plishtim, which was nearby, and with whom they had a peace treaty. And the Plishtim returned them to Edom despite the peace treaty. Now, halacha, Devarim, Pasuk Perak Chaf Gimel, Pasuk Perak Yud, Pasuk Zayin states, one is forbidden to return a servant to his master. Not that halacha should have any influence whatsoever on the Plishtim, but it was a complete exile that they returned them to the exile. We never got away. Now, Aza's punishment, Psukim Zayin and Ches. V'shilachti eish b'chomas Aza, yachla armenoseha. I will send down fire on the wall of Gaza, and it shall devour its fortresses. V'chrati yoshev me Ashdod, v'tomech shevet me Ashkelon, Ashivosi yodi al Akron, v'avdu she'eris plishtim mar Hashem Elokim. I'll wipe out the inhabitants of Ashdod and the ruler who holds the scepter of Ashkelon. I'll turn my hands against Ekron, and the Plishtim will perish, nobody left, said Hashem. Steinmetz interprets, hold on, somebody has just joined us. So Steinsaltz interprets this as Hashem will send fire in the wall of Gaza, and it will consume not only the walls of the city, but also its palaces, Amenoseha, or its large houses, fortresses, or castles. The entire city will fall into enemy hands. Gee, that's Gaza. Wow. I wonder, has that happened? Gaza's fallen into enemy hands? Back into our hands? No politics. The city of Gaza will not be punished alone. Hashem will also eliminate inhabitants from Ashdod, there's also a Philistine city, and cut off the holder of the scepter, the ruler, from Ashkelon, another Philistine city, and he will turn his hand against the Philistine city of Ekron to punish it. Again and again, says Rashi, over and over. And the remnant of the Plishtim will perish, said Hashem. King Uzziah defeated the Plishtim forces probably shortly after this prophecy. Mitzuda says that Hashem's wrath will reach destruction so complete throughout the land of the Plishtim that no remnant of Plishtim shall remain. Next is Tzor. Komar Hashem, al shlosha pishei Tzor, ve'arba lo ashivenu, al haskirom galus shlema ledom, lo zachru bris achim. As we said, al haskirom galus shlema ledom, we just had that. But below zachru bris achim. So says Hashem, because they delivered up a complete captivity to Edom and remembered not the brotherly covenant. Now, there's an additional component to this fourth sin of Tzor, absent in Gaza, which is lo zachru bris achim. Now, this refers to the story in Malachim Aleph, Perikei. The beautiful backstory is that how the wisdom of Shlomo spread among the nations of the world as Shlomo was embarking on building the Beis Hamikdash. Now, Tzor was renowned for its cedars, and its king, Hiram, was overjoyed to be of service. He had a need for David militarily, if not a personal affection. He was happy to be assistant to Shlomo, David's son. Shlomo recognized and praised the talents of the Sidonim, the talents they had with cedar wood. And Hiram recognized Shlomo's wisdom. They made a deal. Hiram's craftsmen would cut the wood to spec and ship it by raft to Israel. I'm not sure if the wood itself was the rafts shifted by raft. I suspect that the wood itself was the raft. And Hiram's artisans on the other end would fashion the wood into the doors of the Beis Hamikdash. In exchange, Shlomo would provide abundant food for Hiram's people's needs. And if we read through the sections of Malachim dealing with Shlomo, the amount of food and the wealth that was turned over in a month was mind-blowing. And out of relevance to our pasuk here, they made a bris, as Malvin explains. Hashem nasan chachma l'Shlomo, hashalom shahaya ben Shlomo ben Hiram, lo ya mitzad shayalo ava in David Aviv, rak mitzad chachmas Shlomo. Ki masha asa Hiram shalom im David, haya ba'avur shahaya ish milchama, kovei sharatzos, yatzarich le'ezraso. Masha haya lo shalom im Shlomo, ba'avur rov chachmaso v'shalva osif l'chrosimo bris ha'ala. Translated as, the peace between Hiram and Shlomo is not because Hiram loved David, Shlomo's father. Hiram needed David's military might, but his peace treaty with Shlomo was because of Shlomo's wisdom, and it became a covenant, a bris, ahava, of affection, which culminates in Malachim Aleph, Hey, Chavav, Vashem Nasan Chochma l'Shlomo, Kasher Diberlo, Vahi Shalom ben Hiram ben Shlomo, Vayichrusu bris Shneihem. God had given Shlomo wisdom, as he promised. There was friendship between Hiram and Shlomo, and the two of them made a treaty. And as Steinsaltz explains on our pasuk, the Lo Zachru Bris Achim, Tzor and Yerushalayim formerly maintained friendly relations, and a bris had even been signed between them. The times of David and Shlomo, I guess a non-aggression pact. There were no recorded disputes between the two nations over generations. On the contrary, the kings of Israel married into the rulers of Tzor and Sidon. Since this once friendly nation turned against Israel and collaborated with its enemies, it gets punished. And the punishment? Pasuk Yud, very similar to Azar. V'shilachti eish b'chomas tzor v'achlo hamenoseha. I will send down fire upon the wall of Tzor, and that shall devour its fortresses. Now, Barbanel explains, it was Nebuchadnezzar who destroyed Tzor and its palaces. Tzor and Asa joined in committing the fourth sin, just like they joined the other nations in committing the other three sins. Steinsaltz says the difference between the punishment for Tzor from Asa is that Tzor is not a prophecy of mass destruction like Asa. Malbim explains that it was first destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar, then by Alexander the Great, as related in Yechezkel. You remember Yechezkel? I spent many happy years studying Yechezkel. Okay, in Pasuk Yud Aleph, we're going to move on to Edom. Komar Hashem Shlosha Pishei Edom, Ve'arba Lo Ashivenu, Arodfo B'cherev Achiv, V'shiches Rachamav, V'yitrof Ba'ad Apo, Devraso Shmara Netzach. Listen to the quality of the hatred. Thus says Hashem, for the three sins of Edom I will turn away its punishment, but the fourth I will not turn away its punishment, because he pursued his brother with the sword, suppressing his mercy, and his anger had slaughtered incessantly, and he kept his wrath forever. We're emphasizing the quality and the longevity of that anger. Abarbanel explains all three of the sins of Edom. Now, there's more than one possible explanation in Abarbanel, so sometimes a bit long-winded can never be considered incomplete. The first sin was in the days of Esav, he pursued Yaakov, his brother. The second sin, days of Moshe Rabbeinu. When the Israelites sought to pass in Edom's land, they didn't allow them to pass, and they threatened, as it says in Bamidbar, Chaf, Yudches, Pen becherev eitzei likrosecha, lest the sword come to greet you. The third sin occurred during the destruction of Bayis Rishon, as it says in Tehillim, Kuf Lamed Zayin, Zachar Hashem Livnei Edom Es Yom Yerushalayim Omrim Aru Al Hayesod Ba. Remember Hashem against the Edomites, the day of Yerushalayim's fall, how they cried, strip her to her very foundations. Which Malbim explains in the voice of David HaMelech. Ani zocher tamid es Yerushalayim u'misader aleha. Kol shekein shata Hashem yesh lecha lizkar l'bnei Edom es yom churban Yerushalayim asher hem azru l'hachareva. Just as I, says David HaMelech, am in constant mourning of Yerushalayim, certainly you, Hashem, must remember the Edomites and their role in helping in the destruction of Yerushalayim. Now, the fourth sin was that the Edomite descendants, the Romans, destroyed Bayis Sheni and spilled the blood of Judeans like water around Jerusalem. That which Amos says, Al Shlosha Pishei Edom Al Rodfo B'cherev Achiv. This refers to the first sin of Esav, pursuing Jacob to do evil to him, because even though he wasn't able to harm him, his intention was murder. The second sin is referenced by Amos' statement, V'shiches rachamav, he curbed his mercy. The third sin is referenced by Vayitrof la'ad apo. His anger raged incessantly, referring to the destruction of the Bayis Rishon, and possibly the word la'ad, unceasing forever, comes from the same root as in Bereshis, Memtes, Chav Zayin, Binyamin, Ze'ev Yitrof Baboker, Yochal Ad, Ule'eri Chalek Shalom. Binyamin is a ravenous wolf. In the morning he consumes Ad, the foe, the enemy, and the evening he divides the spoils. Where the word Ad is used in context of the spoils of war, and during the destruction of the Bayis Rishon, Edom came to Yerushalayim to take the spoils. Regarding the destruction of the second Bayis, the extended exile, and all the tragedies that Yehuda has borne from the nation of Edom, the Navi says, the Ebra so Shmara Netzach. His fury lasted forever. And the word Netzach, clearly he's turning to mean Hashem's fury, refers to the length of the Golus. What says Abarbanel? I also gave a different explanation that may correct, with the three sins that are overlooked refer to the three most serious sins, which are Avodah Zarah,
Zara, Shvichus Damim, and Giloi Arayos.
Exactly. And the fourth is that persecution of Yisrael, in which case they were certainly deserving of punishment for the first three alone, but were only punished for the fourth. The fourth sin is mentioned in Psukim. Amos says, Radfu b'cherev achiv. He pursued his brother with the sword. This occurred when Yisrael passed them in the desert and Edom came out to greet them. Moshe Rabbeinu sent them a message of peace. Thus said your brother Yisrael. And Edom, in their cruelty, curbed their compassion and their brotherly feelings and chased them with the sword. They continued to display rage, animosity towards Am Yisrael that has lasted eternally. Even after Israel settled in their land, Edom continually acted as an enemy. Therefore, Hashem decreed that Midah keneged Midah, deservingly, since their animosity towards Yisrael was everlasting, Hashem would also harbor animosity towards them eternally. And the punishment of Edom in Pasuk Yud Beis, V'shilachti eish b'seiman yachlo arbenos Botzra. I'll send fire upon Teman, and it shall devour the fortresses of Bosra. Teman Sedas Mikra is a name of the son of Eliphaz, Esav's grandson, whose name was given to a major city in Edom. Bosra was a city in Moab that became aligned with Edom. Abarbanel says that Teman was a city in biblical Edom, but Bosra is Rome. You should know, Abarbanel never misses a chance to call Rome, Rome. So called because Bosra means fortified. Dan Yitzchak contends that the use of Teman refers to the punishment in the times of the Navi, but Bosra is essentially an appropriate punishment to the posture described in Pasuk Yud Beis by Yitro Lo'ad Apo, Yevraso Shamra Netzach, which refers to an eternal, unceasing enmity. Hashem declares here that he will punish Edom in the times of Amos with the destruction of Teman, but the fires of his vengeance will smolder for centuries until they will consume Bosra, Rome, the Vatican, the Church, and all it stands for. And the centuries of persecution, all the days of Mashiach, and we will be zochet to see it. So, I'm going to turn to Pasuk Yud Gimel, Ammon. Now, we should remember that Ammon and Moab, the first nation we'll focus on in the next parak, are both from the direct lineage of Lot, Avram's nephew. Komar Hashem, al shlosha pishei b'nei Ammon v'harva'a lo ashivenu. Al bik'am haros hagilad l'man harchiv esgevulah. Thus says Hashem, for the 3 sins of Bnei Ammon, I will turn away their punishment, but the 4th, I will not turn away their punishment, because they have ripped up the women with child, pregnant women of Gilead, that they may enlarge their border. But Steinsaltz explains, the children of Ammon attempted to conquer the adjacent region of Gilead numerous times over the generations. They finally succeeded invading Gilead when the kingdom of Yisrael was weakened, and they cruelly slaughtered its pregnant women. The purpose of such killing of innocents was to oppress the population in order to instill sufficient fear to prevent any future uprising. Rashi explains they ripped up the pregnant women so that no heir would remain, would contest the inheritance. Now, Barbanel takes a completely different linguistic approach. The 4th sin was ripping open Haros Hagilad in order to expand their boundary. The word Haros comes from the word Harim, mountains. The feminine form of the word Harim, meaning that since they were neighbors with Gilead, they would break open the neighboring mountains in order to expand their borders. We know halachically, V'yarur masig gvul reyehu. Cursed is the one who encroaches on his fellow man's borders. And Yirmiyahu said, remember Yirmiyahu? Perak Mem Tes Pasuk Aleph, L'bnei Ammon, Komar Hashem, Habanim Ein L'Yisrael, Im Yoresh Elo, Madua Yoresh Malkam as God, V'yamo, V'yarav Yashav. Concerning Ammon, says Hashem, Israel has no sons, has no heir. Then why has their king, meaning the Ammonite king, dispossessed God? Why have his people settled in God's towns? God is mentioned because it's capital of Gilead and had access to crossing the Yarden. And their punishment, Psukim Yudalad and Tezvav. V'hitzati Eish, B'chomos Rabbah, V'yachla Amenos Seha, B'sru'ah, B'yom Milchama, B'sa'ar, B'yom Sufa. I will set fire to the wall of Rabbah. It will devour its fortresses amid shouting on a day of battle, on a day of violent storm. The king and his officers shall go into exile together, said Hashem. Both Radak and Mitsudos relate the word Malkam to the king, literally going into exile. Well, Malbim relates it to their Avodah Zarah, the Molech, Malkam, their Molech, which was worshipped with fire. Now, this concludes our study of Perek Aleph of Amos, which we have cited 5 nations, their sins, their punishments, but it's inescapable. It basically hits you over the head. Every punishment centers around fire. Every punishment. Look, if we haven't learned and studied in depth the Torah, we've heard the Tochacha enough times to know Hashem has a great imagination. He has a multitude of punishments that he can use. So what do we know about fire? Hashem's anger is often described as bo'ara, burning. On the other hand, when Hashem accepts a carbon, when Hashem doesn't accept a carbon, that's a bad thing. A fire descends to consume it, showing his acceptance, which is a good thing. In Yirmiyahu Chaf Tes, the Navi has been jailed and beaten. He lends to Hashem, Amarti lo az karenu v'lo adaber od bishmo. I will not mention it, no more will I speak in God's name, v'yali bi ke'esh bo'eres. but the divine word was like a raging fire in my heart. Neither good nor bad. Hashem's inescapable presence. At Brisbane Habsarim, in Bereshis, as a backdrop for the vision of the future, Hashem shows Avram Avinu. Vayihi Hashemesh ba'ah, the Allah tohaya, v'nei tanur oshon v'lapid eish, asher avar bein hagzarim ha'ela. When the sun set and it was very dark, there appeared a smoking oven and a flaming torch, which passed between those pieces. Here, a manifestation of Hashem's eternal presence. In Yeshayahu, Tes Yud Zayim, Ki va'ara cha'esh risha'ah. Wickedness has blazed forth like a fire. Certainly a negative connotation here. In Moshe's charge to the nation before his death, he says in Devarim, Tes Gimel, Hashem Elohecha hu over lefanecha eish ochla hu. Hashem is crossing at your head a devouring fire, certainly terrifyingly bad. Yet regarding the Oel Moed, Chen yeheh tamid ha'anan yechasenu umara eish laila. Was always so. The cloud covered it, appearing as fire by night, clearly as a protection and comforting presence. When Yeshayahu sees his vision of Hashem in Perek Vav, he calls himself Ish Tnei Sfasayim, a man of impure lips. How is this remedied? Vaya'af Elai echad min hasrafim uviyado ritzpah. Then one of the Srafim were taking a live coal from the altar with a pair of tongs, flew over to me. If you haven't learned this, it's worth learning that parak. Vayiga al pi vayomer hine naga zeh al slasecha v'sor avonecha v'chatosecha tuchu par. He touched my lips and he declared, now that this has touched your lips, your guilt shall depart, your sin be purged away. Hashem's fire as a purifier. Fire is apparently a manifestation of Hashem in all his awesome power. How Hashem uses fire? Just one facet of his incalculable arsenal. Changes with his disposition to each situation. With his disposition to our situation, that of our enemies. Here in Amos Perek Aleph, Hashem's anger as punishment is projected as a consuming fire for all 5 of our enemies in this Perek. May it be his will to use his fire as the ultimate weapon against all our enemies, present and future, to Yemos HaMashiach, when the term enemies will no longer be relevant. Shalom Lachem. That's Perek Aleph. Anybody? Comments? Questions?
Sure.
A comment. I'm gonna send a map, a link to a map that Rabbi Trump used in his Nach Yomi for Sefer Shoftim, just because it visualizes where all the enemies were in relationship to Eretz Yisrael. So Gilad was like right across from the first one. And basically that the enemies that are listed in this parak are like all around. So from the Aza in the southwest to Edom in the like far southeast, and Amos and Moab on the east,
Moab, yeah.
and then Bashan and also on the northwest, and Bashan on the northeast.
Wow, that's fantastic. I look forward to getting it. I will append it to what I have over here. Greatly appreciated.
Thank you for your offer.
Anybody else? Okay, in that case, I thank all of you for coming. And you're all welcome to this being a short shiur because it's a short parak. Everybody,
Sure.
sei mir gesund, be well. We're going to have a wonderful Shabbos coming up ahead.
Right.
And have a good Shabbos, everybody. Yashkaya.
Thanks.
Bruchim to you.